Hello, and welcome to the Reality Podcast. This is a podcast for health professionals built by nurses. Now, generally we're going to talk about innovation and what's happening in the world of healthcare. And we do all of this through our subscriber feed, which is Bundle of Rays. So just head over to www.bundleofrays.podia.com to find out more. Otherwise, let's sit down, have a glass of wine or a coffee, and see where the conversation's going to take us this week. Okay, hi folks. This week we're lucky enough to get some time from Matt Chacon from Rumii. How you doing, Matt?
Good, man. How you doing, Bradley?
Yeah, not too bad, man. It's 7:30 in the morning here in Queensland. I've already been down the beach for a quick walk, so soothe the soul. How are you?
Good. Yeah, I'm jealous of you being so close to the beach. It's good. It's about 2:30 in the afternoon here in Seattle, Washington, and although I do surf pretty regularly, the water's pretty effing cold, so it's not like it is out there.
Well, you're just tipping into autumn, right? Winter is coming.
Winter's coming, man. Yeah, it's already cold. Actually, we're hitting like the low 60s now, so I'm already in a sweater.
Yeah, fair enough. And you've been indoors a bit already, haven't you, this year?
Yeah, it's like the rest of the world, man. We have all rushed to the comfort of our living rooms to work from home.
So some of our listeners might not have come across Rumii. Most of our listeners are nursing based in Australia and the UK. If you had to give people a rundown about what Rumii is, maybe just give us a bit of an explanation about that.
Yeah, sure. So Rumii is an immersive virtual reality platform for education and training. That's it. It's literally that simple. So essentially for nursing, where it would be relevant in the medical field is, you can use our platform to do distributed immersive like nursing training on any sort of, on most topics actually. That you would use in nursing, but it's used for a lot of distributed instructor-led education.
Yeah. So currently I use Rumii within our business to deliver lectures essentially. And those users can be anywhere globally, right? They can log in on different devices, so VR or on a PC, and then participate in an immersive lecture where they can walk around inside the lecture. So it's like, Zoom and Teams have obviously come to fruition during lockdown, but now what you guys provide, it's sort of being able to get in the screen, right? And sort of participate rather than just observe.
Yeah, I would say that exactly right. When the pandemic happened, I think the world leaned into kind of the same old, what was already easy and accessible. So, like Zoom, Teams, Skype, these types of things, GoToMeeting, they're all good. They're all very, very good, but they're very flat, very non-interactive experience. And as a result, you've heard the phrase coined Zoom fatigue. Kind of shows, it encapsulates what everyone's feeling, which is, I'm tired of seeing a bunch of ugly mugs on broken video screens, at varying qualities of bandwidth. So, and honestly, nobody wants to put on their hair and makeup for a meeting, quite frankly. So with VR, you don't have to do that. You're an avatar, you pop in, and it's just like being there, in the same room at the same time. Look to my left, I see someone. I look to my right, I see someone. So it's very immersive. It's nice.
Yeah. I wrote a bit of a blog post and I titled it "Zoom is Dead" a little while ago. And I actually had a lot of feedback, Zoom is great and Zoom's really helping me. And the reality is like Skype, it's been around for like, 10, 15 years, it really is the functionality that people did move towards. But, one of my best mates, he's hilarious. So he's a tradesman, he lays concrete and he's sick of doing that. So he's going to university to do environmental science. So the point of the story is that he goes to university and they say to him, okay, well, you pay your $30,000 fees or $40,000 fees. And you start in 2021. He said, okay, cool. Really excited. Can't wait. Okay. And they said, do you want to come onto campus or do you want to do it from home? And he said, well, when I come into campus, there's labs and I get to do tests. And they said, yeah, that's right. Yeah. And he said, and what happens when I go at home? He said, oh, we just deliver it on Zoom. And he said, yeah, but what happens to my fees? Oh, they're the same. So then all of a sudden you just think about that globally and you go, well, hang on a minute, this is a huge step change for the whole education industry about how they operate. And
that's for sure, man.
It's fascinating to think about that change, which, they've been pretty stable in their delivery for a long time, but now they're having to innovate. They're having to think about, well, that isn't just good enough to pop it up, and still charge the same fees. They have to offer something more, or they've got to change their fee structure, or, engage the students in a different way. That's what I'm finding fascinating at the moment, is that there's a lot of instructive sort of interpretation around the delivery of education. Yeah, which obviously then looks at your company and other companies to sort of find other solutions.
Yeah, man, that's exactly right. Going back to what your buddy was saying about coming from the trades, years ago, I myself worked in the trades, and before I very much embraced my blue collar back then, and I still do. I mean, if someone wants to talk to me, they can talk to me all day, but doesn't mean a whole lot to me unless you show me your actions. And I learned that way back then when I was working in the trades. And another thing I learned, which very much applies to today, is if you're going to build a house, you can use a rock to hammer in a bunch of nails, right? And that's what we're doing, and it works. And that's what we're doing right now. Like Zoom and Skype, they're good tools, but they're not the right tools for the job. It's a box of rocks, right? So if you're trying to deliver immersive education or any distributed education, it just doesn't work. You're using a rock to hammer in a nail, when right next to you, there's a whole box of hammers called virtual reality and augmented reality. Makes your job a whole lot easier. And in fact, it's cheaper, number one, and it's much more effective. And it's more effective cognitively. People can cognitively process this information much quicker when they experience whatever that information is. Where right now, when you're in a Zoom call, you're not experiencing anything. You're watching something. It's like the difference between being a participant and being a spectator.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I don't know if you know Sam Harris. He has a podcast, Making Sense. Yeah, he had a podcast that was about the future of work, and he was talking to someone from Alphabet, and they were talking about a drill, like you were just saying about the hammer, that analogy, and the real perspective is that actually, if you have a drill, you don't want a drill, you want a hole in the wall, right? That's what you want, right? And what you're saying there is that even though you've got different tools as in virtual reality, the hole in the wall, the learning experience is improved, right? That's what the research is kind of coming out and telling us.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. We've known about this since the 40s. There were studies done by many researchers around the world, but I think one of the more prevalent ones was done by a guy named Edgar Dale, and he came up with the Edgar Dale cone of learning. And he was able to prove that we actually retain 90% or greater of what we experience. And we retain less than 10% of what we just watch. Or, so if you're in a lecture, you're watching someone, you're not participating in that. So it's a big difference in cognitive improvements.
Yeah, and I think, for me as a nurse, I don't know how much e-learning you've ever done, but when I'm doing e-learning, I usually want to reach for certain type of weapon and end my life pretty quickly, because the monotony, the boredom, if you can interact with a 3D model, look inside it, walk around, have a look at the environment, it just, you're not distracted by your phone, this ongoing fight for our attention isn't being, you're in the moment. So definitely, obviously I'm a VR evangelist. You're not convincing me. It's more a description for everybody else, but it's an exciting time. And I perceive that this influx of attention from people like Facebook and Apple is going to have a bit of an effect in 2021.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think, like you and I were talking before you started the podcast. I mean, let's be very honest. This is still the whole spatial computing industry, AR, VR, XR, AI, all of it. It's still a relatively nascent technology. It's still a really super new industry. I mean, my company has only been around for 4.5 years, and we're considered one of the older companies in the market. And that's only 4.5 years. So it's still a new market right now, and we haven't really cracked all the nuts yet. So, I see us reaching good levels of scale as a market post bigger companies like Google and Apple, not necessarily Facebook, but like Google and Apple delving into the market and bringing some new innovations that, quite frankly, none of us are just funded enough to do. In order to do a lot of the things, it takes a lot of smart people that are very well funded to accomplish these goals. And a lot of technologies don't exist either. So we're moving that direction, but for sure, there's no doubt that spatial computing is going to replace mobile computing. Just like mobile computing replaced desktop computing. Everybody carries a phone. Not everybody carries a laptop. So we're heading that direction.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And, we just touched on Facebook there. Obviously, there are new headsets coming out and they're making it cheaper and blah, blah, blah. And, like I'm currently doing some work with some Korean universities where their students kind of attend hospitals to do their clinical learning. So they're using VR to do some simulation and to learn skills and to do lectures. And I use Rumii and Engage for that. And, the scope then, when you start thinking about this sort of collaborative work, really is mind-boggling, because I could be teaching a first-year nursing student, or I could be having a collaboration with the CEO of the university talking about, the scope is really exciting. And as a VR provider, I find that the hardware sometimes is a tripping point for people because of this Facebook thing. The HTC have got their world, everybody's got a platform, but if you're the end user, the end user experience can be really limited by platforms. Everybody's got a platform, and then which platform do I get? The platforms don't play with each other, etc.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that is the one, you hit the nail on the head, man. That is the number one issue in our industry that is preventing us from all of us from being successful. I mean, now look, there's plenty of opportunity for everybody to win. All of the Spatials and Glues and Rumis and Engages of the world and the Vives and the Oculus and the Picos, like plenty of opportunity. The world is a big place, a small place, but it's a big place at the same time. Lots of opportunity for everyone to win. But where we're falling down is we're all creating a mall. So HTC has their mall in their part of town, and Oculus has their mall in their part of town, and they all have their own stores. Now, some of them have the same stores in the same malls, but if I want to buy a pair of jeans at the HTC mall, I can only wear those jeans when I go to the HTC mall. I can't throw on those jeans and wear them when I go to the Oculus mall. It's a major issue. So we need to come together as an industry and honestly treat it as like a hippie commune. We need to treat this as Woodstock and help each other succeed and help each other build strong competition in the marketplace so that we can all win. And we all have our place, right? Like, if you want to play great games, go to Oculus. They're a gaming first device, and they do it really, really well. If you want to use a tool, like an actual productivity tool that is expandable and can meet all of your needs, as complex as they are, go to Pico Interactive. If you want really high quality, field of view and rendering, go to HTC. They have amazing HMDs the text on those is phenomenal, especially the pros. But so anyway, it's a bit of a frustration, but we'll figure it out. and we'll figure out how to bridge those gaps as an industry.
Yeah. The interesting part for me is that I'm a vendor, so I'm between people. So, you know, recommending software like Rumii or whatever, obviously then the conversation comes on what headsets should I buy? And, you know, that just generally gives me a bit of cold sweat because I'm like, all right, well, you know, let's buy the, you know, Oculus Go. No, don't buy that because that doesn't exist in it. You know what I mean? Like, what's the longevity? So there's just some questions around headsets that I find interesting.
I will say this, man, about headsets. I don't mean to interrupt you, but you know, one thing that I think that we're doing, which is worse than what you just mentioned, that's a big problem for the industry. You know, no industry is perfect, you know, but we're still growing as an industry. We're figuring it out is what we're doing. We're going through the growing pains. But one of the things that I don't agree with in our industry is treating the HMD market like the iPhone market. You know, there's no reason at all that we need a new HMD every 18 months. You know, let's get an HMD, let's get it working. Let's not try to look into our crystal balls and invent a future that the world isn't ready for yet. Let's try to get a little stable. It's okay not to have a new HMD every 3 years. One every 3 years, I think, is good. One every 18 months is bad because you sunset existing devices that everyone just bought and they're used to. Now they have to invest double that to buy the new HMD and then another 18 months. So it's like, we're not the iPhone market. The iPhone market wasn't the iPhone market before it was the iPhone. They didn't do this, you know, but now we all think we have to live in this fear of missing out. We don't need to, you know, let's get it stabilized and let's move forward and let's actually support our customers, not our bottom line. So I don't think we should be pursuing, maybe where it comes down to is this, we're pursuing profit. We're not pursuing booking revenue. Let's just book revenue. It's okay if you're not making money. Let's build a good industry first, and then it'll scale.
Yeah. And, you know, I've got a perfect example of that was where I have a client who had 50 original Pico Goblins, you know, the first Pico headset. I think I talked to you about this previously. They bought 50 of them 4 years ago. And then COVID came along at the start of this year and they said, oh, great, let's get those headsets out and let's do some research. And, you know, they actually had some really good ideas about how to use these headsets. And no software currently works on those headsets because they've been sunsetted. So that was a purchase of over like $50,000 that is now basically just dust. And 4 years, you know, like to be completely redundant in a 4-year period is a tough thing. So that's good.
Especially when you're, man, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's especially, and that's happening across the board with all HMD manufacturers. It's wrong. It's you know, when you're, I have a 10-year-old MacBook Pro, still works. You know, I have many computers at home. One of them is a 10-year-old MacBook Pro. I've got an 8-year-old, I think it's 8 years old MacBook Air, still works like a champ. You know, like they're great. Because I only need them to do certain things. I don't need them to do the latest thing that everyone's doing. Like fill my money need and I'm good. And support me as a customer. Honestly, man, we're gonna hurt the industry. But I think one good thing that's gonna help alleviate all of that mess is WebXR. You know, once we're not downloading all of these things and making them device specific, once I can make everything fully agnostic by making it an immersive web experience, I think we're good. We're not there yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, even the whole concept of side loading, you know, like, you know, if I have a big enterprise client and I have to, you know, that's just a nightmare. And if people don't know what side loading is, you know, you have to get a file, connect the cable to the headset, use a specific, it's a little convoluted process just to upload a program. So that's exciting. So what's happening for Rumii, man? What's going on next 6 months? What kind of goals are you kicking?
Yeah, great question. So without giving away, you know, the all the secret sauce, I can tell you that our new users, so we're legitimately heads down focused on education and training. So for right now, we operate in 3 main market verticals: education, enterprise, and defense. And we have really good global market traction. Like I said, you know, we've been around for 4.5 years, but you know, we're going to continue to be focused on education and training. we are releasing a new version of Rumii. It's going to be internal test complete this mid-October, so middle of this month. Completely different. It's going to look nothing like existing Rumii. So what we've done is we've taken a lot of your advice, actually, your input. We listen to our customers actively. We've taken input from you and from other customers. We've actively added that to our product backlog. We've tested it with a few internal customers, and what's coming out is we've got an API that we're releasing. We've got a new skin. So Rumii is going to be totally reskinned. We've got new feature sets. We're doing integrated artificial intelligence. We have a whole list of things just to make it easier for our users, because we actively involve our users in our development process, and we ask them three things: what do you want? What do you need? What are you willing to pay for? That's it. And then we take that, we put it in our product backlog, we kind of measure it again, like most people are saying this, not a whole lot of people are saying that. We've had a couple of people request this, so it deprioritizes things. And that's built our upcoming release. We've got a better level of HMD support. So we'll be supporting the Pico Neo 2 here in relatively short order this year. And the reason for all of this is, one, we just want to grow as a company. We deliberately have not done a release. This is very much by design in a year and a half. The reason we haven't done a release is because going back to the HMD conversation, our customers just didn't need a shitload of new features. We didn't want to bloat our software with a bunch of things that were completely unnecessary. So we just are continue to tweak what our customers needed, and that now is resulting in our first major release, which is going to really benefit our customers. And also, when the pandemic started, our new users increased over 2,000%. So it's been a crazy hot demand right now, because a lot of people are in lockdown and people still need to go to school and work and learn, and they can't really do that right now. So that's kind of what we got coming down the next 6 months. We're doing a new release, some new feature sets, and continuing to dive into education and training.
Yeah, awesome, man. That sounds exciting.
Yeah,
it's
cool. We've been testing it with some internal customers. We've been testing it with some of our defense customers, and some of our education customers, and they've all been really good about being transparently honest with us, which is what we want. We don't need you telling us we look good in this prom dress when we don't. I need you to tell me, like, this works, this doesn't work, here's what needs to get improved, and here's what worked really well. So continue doing that. And that's kind of what we're doing. So it's been great.
Yeah, sounds good, man. So the concept of the metaverse is evolving.
It is, yeah. In fact, I wrote a book on that. It's coming out later this year, on the metaverse. And what we want to do is we actually want to build a good ecosystem of partners to help us all expand in the metaverse. The metaverse, just like the internet, is a very real thing. It's going to, just like the internet, the metaverse is going to be something that we rely on a day-to-day basis, and we don't even really know we rely on that. So there's new technologies coming out that are pretty forward-thinking, like digital light field technology. Google's been working on it. That's going to replace the need for HMDs and glasses, and it's going to be. It's actually what I'm excited about, that technology, while some years off, is going to make accessibility better, and a much more frictionless experience for everybody to kind of experience the metaverse.
Yeah, it's kind of like photogrammetry, isn't it? You can lean into that some of the work that's going on in photogrammetry. Like, I've seen a Chinese provider flew a drone over a city and basically laser mapped this city. So if people don't understand what photogrammetry is, it's essentially the sort of topographical mapping of an environment. So in this instance, a Chinese city, a drone flies over, and it essentially takes like a photo of the city but it's entirely in 3D. So you can lean in and look around the buildings, and and it's in HD, so you can see textures on woods when you zoom in, mate. It's just crazy. And then when you start to think about having a 3D component into real, like very realistic photos, and you apply that, and then you can experience that in virtual reality, that is just, that's when the question comes of what really is reality. Because Elon Musk talks about us being, cyberkinetic beings, because we've all got a phone in our hand. And then you watch The Social Dilemma, and they talk about the fact that everybody's Facebook is a different reality. So here's all these cyberkinetic beings living in a different reality. And then you've got Matt telling you that VR is going to be the next, and then all of a sudden you really do have this sort of like very powerful social environment experience that people are going to be able to go into. And, it's limitless to think how it could be applied. Obviously, straight away, when you think about things like The Social Dilemma, you think, oh, God, Jesus, here we go. This could be bad. But, the application to work, it really is going to change the landscape of how we interact with work or even tasks. It's fascinating stuff.
It's pretty impressive stuff. Yeah, like it's absolutely, it's not like future, thinking 10 years. It's not like, hey, what does the world look like in 2030? It's already here, and it has been here for a long time. We've been working in it every single day for 4.5 years. So like, for example, where the metaverse is impacting us, I haven't been to an office physically. I've never, in about, God, over a decade, actually. I haven't actually hopped in my car and driven to work in over 10 years. So I'm fortunate to work in a space where that's a reality. Not everyone is that fortunate, but we are that fortunate, all of us, to have our lives impacted in that regard in some way, whether it be learning or remote exercise or whatever it is, training. It's may not be all day, every day, but it can be some days, on some times. And I'll tell you, with the exciting thing about the metaverse is, if you get this collection of avant-garde technologies like, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, literally nothing is off the table. Everything is possible. And that's what frustrates me about how content is created for our existing metaverse. We keep trying to replicate the real world. We build tables and chairs into VR. They have their place for certain experiences, but not all experiences. We can, if we want to work on the ceiling, if we're in virtual reality and we're standing on a floor and we're looking at each other as though we're standing on a floor, I should be able to tag you and then jump up to the ceiling and make that our floor. So that becomes our new reality. So every surface is a work surface. We can work in a tesseract. I can work in a 3D photorealistic environment from anywhere on Earth, and I can work in places that don't exist. But what's going to happen, and this isn't even 30 years down the road right now, but what's going to happen, it's already happening, is digital twinning. So if I want to learn a new skill, I can create a digital twin of Matt Chacon in Rumii using artificial intelligence and say, go learn these things, boom, and send my digital twin off to go learn those things, while I, Matt Chacon, am out drinking with Bradley at the pub all day long, and surfing and doing whatever we want to do. And my digital twin is acquiring all these skills in the metaverse. And then I can check in on my digital twin and say, okay, you now know French and you know marketing. So I need you to go sell Rumii to Ericsson's digital twin in France. Boom, go. And that'll happen. That's not crazy future Star Trek kind of stuff. This is happening now. So we are going to be creating multiple realities for ourselves, and honestly kind of blur the lines between what's real and what's not so real.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I did a podcast with a guy called Rob Ferriot from Toronto. He works in the education space in Canada. And he was just telling me about, learning languages in the metaverse. Like he's built a house, so if you go in and you learn, I think he was learning native indigenous languages for Canada. But, if you're in a kitchen and you say, oh, pass me the fork, you know, if you're learning that language and you're experiencing the kitchen and you're experiencing the fork in that cultural setting, in the, you know, the local language, you learn it so much faster rather than just saying, you know, bonjour, je m'appelle Brad, you know, like you're able to actually physically undertake tasks while learning the language. All of the evidence says that you learn it nearly twice as fast. And that's, you know, that's just such an easy use case for something like the metaverse as the tip of the iceberg, let alone thinking about skills or, you know, communication, even around sort of, you know, conflict resolution or whatever it might be. But yeah, it's a fascinating topic.
Yeah, immersive language learning is it's one of those low-hanging fruits that we don't do enough of, actually, in the metaverse. You know, it's, you know, one of the early projects that we worked on was with a language learning company, a very large language learning company that I'm sure everybody knows. But, you know, you can be a first responder in a conflict zone or an earthquake zone or somewhere like that, and you encounter a child who is without parents and you don't speak the language. So if you need to learn the language that this child is speaking as a first responder, you can fully immerse yourself in that environment and talk with that person and learn how to not necessarily interview the kid through language learning, but how to elicit information from this person and learn the language and pick up objects like a teddy bear or a cup or a bowl of soup or something, and learn how to interact and learn their cultural differences. And because it's not just learning the language, it's learning the culture as well.
Yeah.
And you can only do that if you're immersed in it. So yeah.
Yeah, fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that concept of use case, like you said, because the industry is so young, right? We're really just scratching the surface around the utility of the headset, because that's one thing that I have found to be what's the word? I don't know. Everybody's selling a product, right? So, you know, you might be anatomy or you might be this, or you might be that. But if I'm the end user, if I'm a university, I probably want to buy 5 or 6 things, right? And that's where like your company and all the other collaborative providers are like, it's an easy go-to, because immediately the students can be at home on their phones or PCs and log in and have that multi, you know, device capability. But not a lot of people put that end user, like you said earlier, at the center of the experience. And, you know, learning a language, you can do that from home in the headset, collaborate with other people, and being able to provide a multi-use case, you know, rather than just thinking about a use case. I think a multi-use case, you know, if you're selling an app, you need to be able to say to them, well, while you've got the headset, why don't you also use it for this or this, just to increase the productivity? Because if you're spending money on an asset and it's only getting used for an hour a day for one purpose, you know, nobody's ever going to look at that and think that's a good return of investment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's tough, man. It's for sure we suffer from that as an industry, you know, selling, hey, buy this $700 or $400 head-mounted display and use it for 20 minutes once a day, or 20 minutes once a week, right, for this one thing. It's a tough sell. But I think the one thing that we really bring as an industry that we need to leverage, we need to do a better job of leveraging this, is community. You know, the spatial computing industry has a really supportive community. You know, we have a lot of competition. It's good competition. The tide has kind of come in and gone out, and all the people that are still here, I think, represent good, stable competition, which is great. And we're all very supportive of each other. You know, I regularly talk to the CEOs or executives of my competitors, and, you know, we share information back and forth, and it's good. You know, we want to continue winning together, because that's how we win. There's no one tool that serves every job. Just like, you know, you had a tool chest, you don't only have a hammer in that tool chest. You've got all the tools you need to accomplish your goal. So yeah, I think we can do a better job we need to do a better job of encouraging and supporting community, because it's going to help us at least try to navigate around these issues with the social dilemma, right? Like, my reality on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter is my reality, and you kind of get sucked into these echo chambers. So I think we need to do a better job of exploring more cohesive and dynamic communities.
Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, totally agree. And, looking, after watching Social Dilemma, and even, I've gone down rabbit holes in podcasts and listening to all the stuff, the negativity just creeps in. And again, it's because the user experience isn't at the center of that. It's about the data, yeah, I think just always making sure that you're there to provide a solution to somebody, is really the key to that. And that's essentially what you're describing as a broader picture, is that as a community, we make sure that we're here to provide a product to make services better, which is obviously key. But outside of the next 6 months, so from a simulation perspective, you do a fair bit of work with defense, don't you?
We do, yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting. And is that related to education, or is that sort of operational?
Good question, actually. So our platform is an education and training platform, and regardless of market vertical, education, enterprise, or defense, yep, honestly, they all use us for the same exact use case: instructor-led distributed education or instructor-led distributed training. We are very much by design not used in any sort of like direct action operational capability, because I'm not a big fan of training, doing like combat training or firefighter training in virtual reality. The reason for that is because I don't believe I think it hurts the training. I think if you're going to train in combat scenarios, whether you're fighting a fire or whether you're trying to fight other human beings, let's be honest, you need to train like you fight. And because when the shit hits the fan, you're going to go back to your lizard brain. Your brain goes through this thing, which I know you know about, called the OODA loop. And you don't even think about, you've heard the fog of war. It's kind of like looking through a toilet paper tube or a wrapping paper tube. You don't really have any peripheral vision, and you act instinctively, almost robotically. And you go back, your brain goes back to your last level of expert level training. The problem is if that training was, I had to put on a head mounted display and I had to hold controllers, but in the real world, you're actually holding a rifle or you're holding a fire hose. When you're in these very high stress dynamic situations, you're going to just confuse your brain. So I'm not a big fan at all of using virtual reality or even augmented reality to do that sort of training. You need to train like you fight. But I'm a big fan of doing it for, in defense, doing it for anything that's in the rear with the gear, right? I think that's a great use case. And honestly, less than 10% of U.S. armed forces are in combat roles. Yeah. So it's not a big market. It's a very, very tiny market. I'd rather focus on a bigger market. So, I think it's good for, like, what we're used in intelligence training. We're used in leadership training a lot, actually, and in more like forward-thinking defense think tanks. That's kind of, so more like collaboration. That's how they use us, and it seems to work quite well.
Yeah, awesome, man. All right, well, I won't take up too much of your time, but it's been awesome chatting, man. I think that concept of collaboration is particularly where I'm leveraging, products like yours. Like, if we can build a community of nurses that can log in with no sort of geographical restrictions, like if it'd be so meaningful to me. Like, I'm speaking with the president of the African Nurses Association this week, like, if I could link in and help provide training to nurses in Tanzania and Kenya and help improve hospitals, like, it's not that hard, really. It's just using a medium that's accessible, it's cost effective, and then they get access to some quality training in real time with real feedback. It just makes a lot of sense. So kudos to you and your team, man. You're doing a good thing. And hopefully these communities that you talk about, Sam Harris talks about social media as being a factory for cults, right? let's hope that VR can be a factory for communities, rather than cults. So
right on. Love it. Amen, brother. Preach the word. I love that.
Well, thanks for your time, man. You take care. Keep doing what you do. Enjoying your work. So it's all good.
Thanks, buddy. Stay cool, man. Talk soon. Bye.
Well, that's it for another week. We hope you enjoyed our podcast. If you're enjoying the content and what you see here at Bundle of Rays and through the Reality Podcast, just head over to our subscriber feed, which is www.bundleofrays.podia.com, and we can continue to chat over there. But for now, you stay safe and just keep going. Cheers.